Welcome to the Adventures in Alchemy podcast, where we share tips, techniques, and true stories to support you in using the law of attraction and alchemy to create magic and live the life of your dreams. Here's your host, the founder of dailyalchemy.com, Michelle Martin Dobbins.
Hey guys, it is Michelle Martin Dobbins from dailyalchemy.com. And today I want to talk to you about vows and taking vows. And if you're like most people, when you think about vows, the first thing that probably comes to mind is your marriage vows. That's a vow that a lot of people take during their lifetime. And for many people, it's probably the only vow that they will take, especially in a, ceremonial way. And I've been thinking a lot about vows lately because I took a class recently where at the end of the course, the teacher invited us to consider taking a bodhisattva vow. I believe I've heard it pronounced a couple of different ways, and I'm going to put a link in the show notes to some information on bodhisattva vows, and also the spelling will be there. So if you want to Google it and do your own research. But a bodhisattva vow is actually a Buddhist vow. And from my understanding, you don't necessarily have to be Buddhist to take the vow. It seems though, I've done a little bit of research, and a little bit of research can be dangerous, right? On Buddhism, I am not a Buddhist. I think several parts of their religion are very beautiful. But from what I have seen, they do take quite a lot of vows as part of their religion. Where in, a lot of the other religions, instead of necessarily taking spoken vows, in the Christian religion, it's usually baptisms, and the only people who are required to take vows are more people who are actually serving the church as, a priest. That's more in the Catholic tradition, priests, monks, nuns. It seems like Catholic tradition, Buddhist tradition are very heavy on vows. Protestant, not as much. I'm not actually sure if there are vows taken by ministers of other Protestant denominations. But, usually when you're indoctrinated in a church, you're kind of taking a vow in a way, but it's not usually worded as such. And from what I recall in my past history, you might want to school me on this if you know more about it, but people are baptized. There's not usually, that I remember, any spoken words, vows that you repeat orally. I'm sure there may be in some traditions. Anyway, so Buddhists take a lot of vows. They take, I believe it's called a refuge vow, which is basically saying that they're going to be a Buddhist and they're going to follow the basic tenets of the religion. And then they can take the bodhisattva vow. And from the research I've done, you can go and actually take a bodhisattva vow without being Buddhist. And I'm going to share, let me just go ahead and share that vow with you, and then I'll talk a little bit more about vows. So the bodhisattva vow is: beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to exhaust them. Dharma-gates are boundless, I vow to pass through them. The awake way is supreme, I vow to embody it. And there are actually some different wording versions out there. I really like that one. That's the one that the teacher shared with us. And so I kind of went through some soul searching and some research on vows, because it was something that was really not on my radar at this point in time. And in some of my classes, I teach, creating a persona, becoming that persona, writing out, basically your mission in life, who you are being. And I like to call it a being statement instead of a mission statement, because I used to do a mission statement, and nothing against mission statements, but to me, a being statement felt even deeper, because it's not just what I'm doing in the world, it's who I am in the world. And from that flows what I do. And, it's kind of like the human being versus the human doing. And so to me, like the difference of that would be something like, I'm going to go really simple. I am a loving individual versus I am here to love people or something. My mission is to love everyone. It is a subtle difference, but to me, it's just like, it's almost the difference in like having a job versus having a career, or, being just being that person full time. Like the job, you check in, you check out. It's not that big of a deal. It's almost more like taking that ownership as a business owner. And, neither one of those are vows necessarily. Although to a certain extent, I feel like we could argue that like everything that you say could be a vow. But, a vow is definitely when you're making a serious commitment to something. And, usually there's ceremony involved in other people, but there doesn't have to be. But I kind of just, when I was invited to take this vow, the bodhisattva vow, I did a lot of meditation and thought on it. And I actually I found a place close to me where I could go and take the vow through a Buddhist monk who gives it to like anybody who wants to come and take it, which is really nice, is that you don't have to be a Buddhist. You don't have to be a part of it. You can just take this vow. And I'm not going to get into explaining the vow because I wasn't sure that I totally fully embody. I think it's beautiful, and definitely one of my goals in life is to see everybody else free and fulfilled and whole. And that's the first tenet, is beings are numberless. I vow to free them. And here's what I think gets me with the bodhisattva vow is like there's kind of they're numberless, but I vow to free them. Delusions aren't inexhaustible, but I vow to exhaust them. So in a way, you're like kind of saying that you are going to keep working on this, but it's impossible. And so after I like really, really sat with it, I decided not to take the bodhisattva vow for now. I think it's a beautiful vow, and I would invite you to investigate it and investigate, anything around vows. But I feel like if you take a vow, you should really know what you're saying for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that I really feel like it's damaging to your soul if you don't keep a vow. I think there are times when you can break a vow, but I feel like it almost has to be as strongly worded and worked. I mean, it's not like just, I changed my mind. It's like, oh, I vowed this, but now I have this information, that changes things. But I feel like it almost needs to be like wedding vows, okay? I actually feel like it does need to be like a wedding vow, because using wedding vow as an example, if you take wedding vows and you don't honor them, I mean, yeah, there are tons of people, I'm sure, who go and say them and don't mean them for squat, and maybe like are cheating on their spouse at that moment, or, are just marrying them for convenience or for money or for whatever reason, and they don't ever intend to keep those vows. I think that's damaging to your soul. And I don't mean that to be ugly or like overly religious or anything. I'm just saying that I think when you say, I vow this, and, you're making that statement, out loud, maybe there's a little bit of gray area when you in your mind don't believe it, but when you state it out loud, your subconscious mind hears that, your soul hears that, your higher self hears that, the universe hears that, and they expect, the energy expects you to do that. And when you don't do that, you're out of alignment. And that's what I mean by damaging to your soul. I don't mean you're going to go to hell. I don't mean that, everything is going to fall apart. But when you're not in alignment with what you say you're going to do, like things just don't flow really well. They don't go really well. You just aren't going to have high level happiness. And, high level happiness is awesome, even if it's not, your sunshine smile on your face. But I just feel like when you're not in your own truth, then, you're not going to manifest the things in life you want. You're not going to just have that ease and flow and synchronicity where you know that you're on the right path because you just keep getting signs and things go right and things happen and things line up. When you're not in alignment with yourself, I just feel like it's really, really hard for that to happen in the rest of your life. So if you're going to take a vow, I would highly, highly recommend that you make sure that you are in alignment with that vow before you take it. And if you've taken a vow and you're not in alignment with it, then you may want to do some work on breaking that vow. And, I haven't done a lot of research on that, but I feel like you may want to hold a ceremony even with yourself. And the second reason is that you don't want to make a vow that you're not absolutely certain you want to keep is because I feel like these vows they stick with you, even if you've changed your mind, unless you do some energetic work to cancel them, close them out, and say, I'm finished. And in my case, I've done some past life regression work and different things like that. And, if you don't believe in past lives, you can kind of just tread on over this and just think of it as vows in this life. But from some research I've done, there are people who believe that a lot of people have made vows in past lives, like maybe they were a priest or a nun or whatever in a past life, and they made a vow of poverty. And so in this life, they just keep self-sabotaging because they never ended out that vow, and that vow just kind of still stays in their energy field. I'm not 100% sure on my feelings on that, but it seems to me that work that I've done on letting go of old vows from past lifetimes has shifted some energy for me. So that may be something that you want to consider. You may even just want to have like a time where you go into meditation and sit down and say out loud or write out somewhere, I now dissolve any vows that I made in past lifetimes or inadvertently made in this lifetime. If you have wedding vows, you probably don't want to dissolve those. Maybe you do. But think about that. Yeah. And if for some reason if you've gotten divorced and, had those vows, you've done the legal paperwork, but you might just want to do just like by yourself, a little ceremony to say, I'm not here now. I know for myself, I actually did that several years back, and I didn't actually necessarily make a vow, but I was baptized into a church that I decided I didn't want to be a part of anymore. And I let the church membership know with a letter to please take me off the rolls. But I kind of did like an unbaptism ceremony, just myself also, very informally, but very seriously, because I made that choice when I was 17, and then I decided it was no longer the right choice for me. So I just felt like I needed to, when you take on like these significant things, like some people may think that like getting baptized or saying words aren't significant, but they really are. And because there is a meaning behind them, and your soul, your higher self is aware of that. And unless you let, all of you know that, hey, this is not the path we're still on, then So, but as far as making vows, I definitely would encourage you to think about that, because I find that, the two vows that most people make in their lives are, wedding vows, vows to another person, or religious vows. So you're vowing to God or religious order. And those are great. Those are fine. Definitely. In both cases, make sure that you intend to keep those vows and keep yourself aligned with the vows that you're making. But I've kind of felt like there's like a third vow, which is a vow to yourself, And it's not something that a lot of people do. And that's what I decided to do. I really felt that I just wanted to strongly step up my statement of being, as in, this is my vow to myself. This is who I am, and this is what I vow that I am here to do in this lifetime. And so I wrote that out, and, I spent, a couple weeks playing with that and tweaking it and getting the wording the way I wanted it. And I also really looked at it carefully. I didn't want to put myself into I'm not taking a vow of poverty. I didn't want to take anything that's going to kind of come back and bite me in the butt, essentially. And, I say that because, as I said, I feel like if you're taking a vow, it's pretty strong. Not that it can't ever be broken, and not that it can't be, healed and you go, oh, I made a mistake. I mean, we're human. Sometimes you make, marriage vows and you find out, oh, the other person's not keeping up their end, so I'm not going to keep my end. But when you're making a vow to yourself, you may come to a point in time in your life where you go, this served me, and this was what was best for me for 15 years. But now things have changed, and, I'm going to break this vow and end this vow and start another vow. And, I think that's acceptable, just the way divorce is acceptable. But I think in both cases, if you're going to choose to take a vow, think on it some. I didn't think on it a lot because I actually feel like this was it's like the vows were almost already written in my journaling, and I just had to it was kind of a thing. It was like an aligned thing. I knew this was a step that was going to be really good for me personally. And what I chose to do was I wrote out the vow, and I made it really special. I took some parchment paper, and funny enough, I already had the parchment paper. Also, I had some red ink that I put just a drop of my blood in to kind of seal my energy into the ink. And so I wrote it out on the parchment paper with that red ink and a calligrapher pen that I bought. Because sometimes when I'm, I was going to say, sometimes when I'm doing spiritual things, I'll write things out. But to be honest with you, I had never done that before. But for some reason, my soul had called me 6 months ago. I bought the ink. I bought the parchment paper 2 or 3 months ago. And they sat there and I was like, I wonder why I did that. And, then this vow came up. So, it's kind of like alignment. Sometimes you already know what you need. It's when you get into that certain point where before you have the need, you've already supplied it to yourself. Or, it's just already come into your life because your higher self already knows what you're going to need. So, yeah, I did that. I wrote out the vow, and I kind of sat out in my backyard under the full moon and spoke the vow, made the vow my own. I didn't have a big pomp and circumstance as far as that. And I decided to keep it private. I haven't shared the words or anything with anyone. I'm not a big fan of keeper of secrets, but sometimes it just feels like it's more sacred that way. I may change my mind, but that's really just a personal choice that you can make. And as I'm saying, when I'm telling you about making vows, you totally do not need to make a vow. Just kind of inviting you to play with that and consider it, because I feel like it's almost an alchemical process. People can make commitments to other people without getting married. When you get married and you say a vow to someone, it creates a shift in the relationship. And for some people that's good, and for some people that's not been good. And, maybe that's why there are some couples who live together happily unmarried, because for them that state is better of not taking a vow. For some reason, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell are popping up. So, make a choice. It's not like you can't do anything without taking a vow. You certainly can. You can have a long-term monogamous relationship without taking a vow. But a vow definitely changes the energy. If you make a vow to someone else, it changes the energy of that relationship. If you make a vow to a religious order, then it's going to change the energy because, it's different than just that casual, I might be here this Sunday, I might not, or I might come to this meeting, I might not, I might do and, for some people, like the vow maybe feels stifling and doesn't feel good. And for other people, it makes it secure, like this is it. So I would ask you to just play around with it, investigate it, maybe look at the bodhisattva vow, look and see other vows, and consider making vows to yourself. And honestly, I didn't research that before I did it. It just kind of flowed out of me during my meditation, and I decided to do it. So I'm not even sure, honestly, how many other people do that kind of thing of making a vow to yourself in a little bit of a ceremonial, written out way like that. But for me, it feels really good. It feels like it has reinvigorated me to stick with my purpose in life. And the teacher in the class that did the bodhisattva vow was saying that vow gives her strength on her bad days. I don't want to do this. I'm tired, da, 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 da. And then she's like, oh, wait a minute. I have this vow to free all the beings. And so that's why I'm doing it. And so even though I'm tired today, even though I'm feeling kind of, I'm going to soldier on. And it gives meaning and purpose. And I think that's what, a lot of vows do. And so I have found for me, just having recently done this on the last full moon, which was only 5 days ago, I feel right now reinvigorated. And I also know that I'm going to have to remind myself of this vow so that I don't forget. And I don't know, maybe I'll need to do something I wear a wedding band to remind me of that vow. So it's never away from my senses. So maybe I might want to do something permanent. I don't know. Maybe I'll get a tattoo or something to remind me of this vow. But I definitely, right now, I'm just saying it every day. I have it written on a little sticky on my computer screen. So it pops up there. And I'm just kind of saying it to myself as a mantra to really get it into my head that this is a choice that for now and probably for the rest of this incarnation is my choice to make this vow to myself and to other people, because it is a vow of what I want to do. It's kind of similar to the bodhisattva vow, but it's just special for me because I like it that way. And because there were just some parts of the bodhisattva vow, being that I am not a Buddhist, that I don't think I got on a deep level. I don't think it connected with me as deeply as writing my own vows. I guess just kind of how some people like to write their own wedding vows, or some people just like to go with the tradition. So that's my take on vows. I would love to hear your take on vows, if you've taken vows in your lifetime, especially if you've taken something a little bit out of the ordinary that most people take. I would love to hear about it. I would love to hear about how vows influence you. Or if you decide to take a vow, I would love to hear about that too. So you can reach me at dailyalchemy.com. Up in the upper corner, right-hand corner, I believe, are all the little icons to go to all the little social media sites, Twitter, Facebook, all that cool jazz. And you can definitely message me at any of those places. And you can shoot me an email if you're not into the social media scene. I would love to hear it. And if you so happen to be able to stop by iTunes or Stitcher and leave me a rating or review and let me know what you think about the show, that would be amazing. All right, go out, have a magical day, create something wonderful. Consider taking a vow and consider how would you go about your day differently if you had made a vow to yourself and or to the world, to the planet, to the universe, to God, your choice. What would you do? How do you think the energy would shift? All right. Have a great one. Namaste and big hugs. Would you like some help creating more magic in your life? I've got a ton of freebies and goodies for you. They're all tucked away inside my magical freebie vault. You can get free access, though. You just have to go to www.dailyalchemy.com/magical-freebie-vault. Again, that's dailyalchemy.com/magical-freebie-vault. And when you get there, you can just plug in your name and email and you will get instant access to all kinds of goodies. There are daily and weekly manifesting planners, the How to Shift Your Vibe in 5 Minutes e-kit that has audios and a workbook. There are moon manifesting planners and daily love lists and money trackers and all kinds of goodies right there. I didn't want to make you have to go to a bunch of different pages and sites and wait for certain freebies to come out. So I just took all of my freebies and put them in one place where you could just sign up one time and download any of them that you want at any time that you needed. So you can just head on over to dailyalchemy.com/magical-freebie-vault and download them today. Have a magical day.
Thanks for listening to the Adventures in Alchemy podcast. Connect with me on thedailyalchemy.com or Facebook at facebook.com/Michelle Dobbins, author. Join us next time for even more magical life tips.